Vilimovský. I'm a professionally graphic designer and illustrator, so that's my background from which I'm coming from. And I'm also user interface artist for approximately 6 years by now. And therefore, I will be talking about the art of the user interface. So welcome. I have also like a little introduction prepared from my end, because as an artist, usually I work on the art and art speaks for itself, but it's a little bit out of my usual comfort zone because today it's going to be me speaking about the art. So here is a little quick introduction of my past. Now video should be rolling. Is it? Okay. Okay, so this was a little visual introduction, and let's jump right into it. Like it was announced, let's begin, and let's start from the beginning. This is where it all started for me, of course, as a kid. Back in the 90s, playing the games, being fascinated by them, and much later deciding to actually work on them. So if we let computer zoom out a little bit, you can see what we've been playing here. So famous Fallout 2. And to give you a little hint about the era, the second thing on the right is the internet, what it used to be for us back then. So that's approximately how old I am. So let's stop talking about me and let's go to the agenda of today, which is art of the UI. So here is a little agenda, little plan for today. So intro we already went through. What I will do next is to warm up a little bit so we get all synced on the vocabulary and what's the incremental part of the UI, which I'll be talking later about, so you all know where we are. Then we'll jump right into the jungle, talking about the industry itself, like going through some good and bad examples. Oh, I'm sorry. And then we'll jump to the next topic, which is the Cyberpunk, the latest work I did. And we go quite in depth, so stay tuned. And if we'll have some time, we'll manage to go even to the future kind of like philosophical topic or philosophical chapter of this presentation. So let's, with no further ado, let's go warm up. So user interface, what's the user interface? And what's the conundrum actually about this out there? There is a little confusion about two aspects usually connected to the UI, which is the UX and the user interface itself. The confusion usually comes from the different sphere, which is the web design and application. So that's why this strong connection in between two comes from. Because that's the whole product, right? Like when you have application, how it works for you, how you feel it. So it's one-to-one to the UI itself, because that's the whole thing. But for the games, UX, it's a little bit bigger topic, because the game is not just the website, it's not just the application on your phone, but it's the whole experience for the player, for the whole product, and for the game. It's about how intuitive it is for you to play, how interesting it is to play, how engaging story there are, and all of those things. So that's just to be clear what the UX actually means for the games. The graphic design here on the slide, that represents the craft when you work on user interface. This is your backbone, which you really need to know, because all the fundaments of communicating visually, graphic design, it's all about this. So if you want to become if you want to become user interface designer or artist, this is definitely something you should start with. Okay, so user interfaces. Essential parts of them, we can distinguish two important aspects of them, which is first is the front end, which are the menus, full screen panels, and this is the part of UI which is abstract, which is disconnected from the game itself. It's like overlay information, and it's giving to the player the informations which game otherwise can't convey, right? So it powers the world and lets you browse through the inventories and etc. So this is what we call front end. Then there is the HUD, which is a heads-up display, and that's the UI elements and the fragments of it, which are actually when you play the game. Things like health bar and etc. So those are the two aspects of the UI. Here are few examples to be very illustrative about it. Then we have two important disciplines which actually create the user interface. First of them is UI design, and second is UI art. So ideally, to make your UI work perfectly, this goes hand in hand in perfect synergy to deliver the comfortable like information flow to the player. For the games and for the art perspective, it's always about the balance of those two. Of course, the design is here like much more important, because it's the whole flow, it's the whole like informational architecture, how you as a player reach the informations which you need to reach. And the UI art is basically just a wonderful code which is dressing all things up, but it never really should like take over and dominate this subtle balance between those two. Okay, so design is pretty much something like this. So a very fundamental way, what's displayed on the screen and how you interact with this, how you go through the stuff, and how you access the information you need to. A little zoom up, and this is what the dressing up look like. So this is the art. I'll drink a little bit now. Okay, so for the HUDs and inside of the game user interface, we have this categorization, how it's usually going. So first, it's non-diegetic layer. Another is diegetic. Then we have spatial and meta. I'll talk a little bit more about the non-diegetic and diegetic later. So the spatial, it's something which is in the world. The character doesn't really see it. It's basically just the information for the player. So the avatar is not really aware of it. And it's close to the non-diegetic aspect of it or nature of it. I'm sorry. And meta, it's also like close to non-diegetic things, and usually those are the vignettes, kind of like bokeh and like indicators of being harmed or danger happening. It's usually just a texture overlay on the screen. Also, again, something that only player experience and sees is information for the player, not for the character. So let's talk a little bit more about two most important things here, which is what the non-diegetic user interface stands for, what it is. So it's usually the 2D overlay for the game, and like I mentioned, that's what it's only for the player. It's the HUD, it's the navigation, it's the pockets which you have actively equipped, health bars, and similar sort of informations. It's not crazy immersive thing because, like I mentioned, it's just for the player. And then we have UI which can actually be diegetic, and that's actually the opposite of the non-diegetic, which actually exists in the world of the game you play, which is something the character you control is actually interactively or actively interact with. It's something that character is aware, so it works the both ways. It's information for the character, also for the player. A couple of examples here, it's like Division. You probably know this augmented reality, something that your agent is working with and seen and is aware of it. Another is, for example, Fallout 3, where you have like Pip-Boy, which is basically the gadget your avatar is carrying over the whole time and interacting with it and investing points and etc. All the good RPG stuff. And there are, of course, like little hybrids in the games out there. And Nier Automata is a wonderful example. And that works basically the way that you have quite traditional non-diegetic UIs, but they are strongly connected narratively because your avatar is actually installing modules, and each of those like physical installation activates certain aspects of the HUD in the game for you. So there are ways to merge both of those categories. Okay, so the next thing for the UI, what's necessary are the building blocks, the components from which the whole thing is created. I'll fly through this a little bit briefly because we'll be talking mostly about the art. So here just that we are aware what's important. Layout, that's basically the wireframe for the informations, how the panels and everything is organized. Yeah, that's the layout. Another thing is typography, so the set of fonts you will be using and communicating to the player through them. Visual language, basically it's the shape vocabulary which you, as you identify yourself, or how you create the visual impression, the themes, and what your identity is. Iconography, of course, icons has to be there. Color palette, a very essential part of the whole package. Motion graphics, of course, that belongs here as well, and the shader. Shader is basically like a effect which is driven from the engine you work with, and it gives you like plenty of opportunities to help your UI be readable in the first place, but you can also use it in the means of adjusting the visuals and becoming this part or key part of your style. Yeah, of course, and the sound. It's not very visual thing, but never forget about the sound. It's like 50% of your success. So sound has to be there and can't be underestimated. But I'm not sound designer, so we'll talk about the art. And just a little head up, if you want to know about all of those incremental parts, the building blocks, like much more in depth, there's one wonderful presentation from Omer Jonas out there, one of the GDC talks. So if you want to go there, I just felt like if this already exists out there in very well-mannered, prepared presentation, I don't have to repeat it. So there you go if you're interested. One last thing from the warm-up I want to talk about here, it's the colors and a little bit about anatomy of them, about the nature, how we actually perceive them. So how does it work? When you have light beam which enters the retina in your eye, and then it enters the concentration pit. And in this concentration pit, there are perceptor cells and basically the rods, which are sensible on certain wavelengths of the light. And in our case, in our anatomy, it's the three fundamental colors, which is RGB, red, green, and blue. And if you look on the last picture here, which is the cone mosaic, which is kind of like the bigger picture of it, how it looks like, you can see that there's much bigger density of green and red dots in the center, and that basically shows you like how we as humans are sensitive to those particular colors and color tones. And that's what actually kind of guides you to the idea why the red color is used in such ways like warnings, because our anatomy basically tells us that we are sensitive to it, and this is it. This is the match of the information. The theory about the colors has been here for centuries already. This is just a little glimpse of what Goethe was doing back in 19th century. But over the time, we got to something quite sophisticated already. I expect that you guys already seen something like theory of colors, about the warm, cold, how we perceive them, and so on. I would pick only, like cherry pick only two of them right now, because later I'll follow on it. And that would be the red, and the nature of it being having this like negative connotations, being this color with which we conventionally display the danger, something going wrong, and something to be aware of. And another one I would pick probably the purple, because purple is usually associated with the luxury and sophistication and wisdom. So those are just two of my favorite picks, which I will get back later in the presentation. Okay, so with this, that's the end of the warm-up, and we are ready to move our expedition deeper to the jungle. I'll take another sip, if you allow me. Yeah, and let's start with some good examples. So first one is Alien Isolation, which is a game from Creative Assembly. And why I like this, why this is the first one here, it's because it's very honest to its source, which is the movies, the cinematography of the aliens, and how they took the visuals and reflected them in the game. So it's perfectly researched. They very well understand the cinematography language, and with the UI, they tend to be like super minimalistic, and visually on the interactive elements, like all the puzzles, all the computers you interact with, they definitely come from the 80s, and it's like the perfect reconstruction of the things you recognize from the movie. On the UI, it's not crazy heavy thing. It's horror game after all, but even here, they use very much the same vocabulary. So from this perspective, art-wise, it works just perfectly. And of course, here's the iconic scanner, which is perfect UI. Okay, the next one. It's maybe a little bit controversial, but what's important about Deus Ex Human Revolution is the persistence and kind of like diligent, cohesive consistency with which they apply their visual style and what it's composed of. So first of all, it's the color palette, right? After all, it's the game which has a reputation of being orange game. Not necessarily the positive thing, but it's distinguishable, it's unique. You will always understand when you see the UI from this game, or whatever actually, because they applied it on the wider variety of all the game application, going through the marketing, interaction with the computers, the UI itself, and etc. So this is just great example of like having rule set, the styles, the visual art guidance, kind of art bible, and very persistently applied everywhere. So this was Deus Ex. Deus Ex, yeah. Next one is Dead Space, which here in the presentation stands for like the best representative of absolutely diegetic user interface in the games, and how rigorously and persistently EA Redwood Shores actually implemented and executed this. So you can see all of the UI elements, all of the indicators are not part of any HUD. Everything is something that Isaac is interacting with. Everything is part either of the environment or some kind of like augmented reality he's observing through the tools he has. And health bar and the gouge for the stasis feature of the game is actually part of his own armor. So from this perspective, there is like very little games out there which are doing the diegetic as far as this game does. So that's what's exceptional about the Dead Space. Next example, it has to be here because for me, as for a graphic designer back then, this was like revelation, really, because this was literally the first game which I've seen, which was actually like very deliberately using all of the graphic design principles, but still managing to do the wonderful fusion in between this clean graphic design and understandable vocabulary, together with kind of like bridging art, kind of bringing together the world itself and this abstract layer of the user interface. Right, so and how they did this here, they did it through the usage of materials and kind of like the craft. So it's a medieval-ish fantasy game, and how to reflect this on the UI was the textures and you know, like the patterns of the brushes and kind of like the metal frames. So it all feels a little bit like part of the world, or at least is going closer towards this world. So on the front-end screens, you don't see this huge separation. It still kind of like feels as a part of the world. And that's exactly the balance I talked about before, which is like very important to do, having this design and the art like not competing with each other, not one winning over each other, but making them work fluently together. So that was The Witcher. Then there is a little head up about the trends, and that's about the minimalistic approach to the user interfaces, which is, again, nothing wrong about this, graphic design par excellence, all the things works just wonderfully, very simple, strict shapes, iconography, and the very simple color palette, basically like black and white contrasts. And what's great about this, it works perfectly in certain scenarios. In my opinion. It works great for the realistic games from the current era. So contemporary game having UI like this is the good decision because it doesn't take you out of this immersion. It doesn't stand out on its own, and it's just the simple minimalistic way how to convey the informations. The tricky part with the trends is that it's rather easy thing to implement. It doesn't really carry over like crazy amount of visuals, and there are scenarios when it doesn't really work, or it definitely doesn't do the similar thing like The Witcher 2 did, for example, this kind of bridging. So this is it. So let's go a little bit to the controversial approaches of the user interface. Here is one of them. On the visual quality, it's not so bad. It's very science fiction. It's all good. The only tricky part here is the layout and the absolute symmetry and centrity or center alignment of all the things, which is a bit hard for your brain to follow because we tend to read left, right, and when everything comes from center, you start struggling or searching where to begin with your eyes. Also on the right side, my assistant, Mr. Skippy, is showing that the hierarchy and the depth of the interactions is crazy deep. Usually it should be something about like 3 layers. That's something which is comfortable for brain cognitively to operate with. So this goes definitely like much more out of the comfort zone for the brain to process. Yeah, another thing is for the text, like this curvature alignment never really work well. It's kind of against the graphic design principles and basically fights with the readability. So here we have a couple of those examples I mentioned, like when these minimalistic user interfaces are used not necessarily correctly, in my opinion. And that's, for example, here you have the game from the Middle Earth, but the UI doesn't really hint this anyhow, right? It it doesn't glimpse it anyhow. It doesn't kind of like bring it closer together to the world where this all appears actually. And here is virtually like the same topic. It's kind of like laser clean graphic design, but doesn't have much of the fantasy nature of the game. And we have even examples where things get pretty crazy, and that's Witcher 1. And you can here see that the balance of the art and design really didn't work out. So art definitely like took over everything, and even the layout is a little bit creative, which definitely doesn't help much for the user to interact with it and read the information. I hope that the full series working on the remake will address some of those issues later on. Okay, so the last thing before we jump to the Cyberpunk is what to be absolutely aware of and never really go there, and that's the craziness of UI being of similar kind. So this is just cognitively way too much for you. Aesthetically, there's like way too many languages, way too many things happening, and basically you're hiding the game from the player with all of the UI. So please don't do this. The one on the right side, it's just a very complicated thing from the hierarchy of the information. Basically, everything is at the one screen, and you don't structurize the information very cleanly and intuitively for the player. So it's just hard to go through it. Okay, so we have 28 minutes by now, so I should definitely speed up so we manage everything. Yeah, so enough about the jungle out there, and let's go to the last entry in my career, which is the Cyberpunk 2077. So a little bit quickly about the art Bible importance in the game dev. So that's pretty much like the set of rules and themes and visuals and the key arts which helps you to develop the whole game further down the line. So it affects literally everything from the environment, character design, the story progression, and basically like the themes of the game you are working on. And for the Cyberpunk, our art Bible is heavily connected to the timeline of the world, to the history of it. So this is it. We have entropism, kitsch, neo-militarism, and neo-kitsch styles. Each of them like making its peak in the cyberpunk world in its time. So here they are all together, and this is this is the package we had prepared from our art directors. So you can see like each of the styles is very distinctly different. So for the entropism, it's a very saturated thing, very dimmed color palette available. It's very grounded. It's something from technological perspective, which is unreliable, cheap. You know, it's the thing of past. Kind of like think of the industry of the world, like metallurgy and etc. Things like this. So this is the entropism. Next one, which made it peak in 2020 in the cyberpunk world, is the kitsch style, and that's as you can see, like much more flashy, much more bold. It's still a rather cheap thing coming from the plastic materials. But it already starts to be more eccentric and kind of to build the identity of yourself, to express yourself in this world. So that's what the kitsch stands for. Of course, it's super colorful. Then in 2070 or 2050, after the war in the world, from the lore perspective, the corporations dominated the space, and with this they used kind of like military softwares and military technology. That's what caused their dominance. And from this, the vocabulary of very cold colors, color palette, very sharp shapes, cool materials, very strict modern, and from the perspective of the technology, like super reliable technology. So this is our neo-militarism. And after the once world got a more stable place, then the rich people could develop their own thing. And with this takes place our neo-kitsch style. Kitsch, it's because it's still about like self-representation, but because it's the discipline or topic only for the rich people, it's coming with the appropriate package of materials which are unavailable for other mortal beings in the world. So it's the wood, because it's largely extinct or disappearing from the world. Rich materials like pressure metals like gold, and so on. And as you remember from before, from the color palette, it's using the combination of the purple and those gold-rich metal colors, which represents the luxuriousness. So this is the fourth style. And within all of those four styles, as a UI, we created our own subscription to it, or our own part of it. So let's go through them. Entropism, starting with this. So this is our key art from our end. Definitely some references where we started with are the oldest softwares in our own world, so the players can cognitively make the connection in between this. And color palette is grabbed basically from the art Bible. No deviations here, that would be counterproductive. On the shapes and aesthetics, it's very strict, very simple. It basically works just with the rectangle-ish shapes. Color-wise, it's not crazy at all. Basically working only with the contrasty color of the dark and greenish washed out front layer of it. Then there is the kitsch, which also should align nicely with what the kitsch is about. So it's much more colorful. From the color palette, still we don't go to the full spectrum. For the UIs, you always want to have a rather limited amount of them. So here we have kind of the three important colors, which would be the yellow, the cyan-ish, and the red-ish background kind of vibe. From the perspective of the shapes, they are much more fluid, they are not that rigid, they're much more creative and roundish kind of shape vocabulary is to represent this cheapness and this kind of playfulness, sort of like Tamagotchi-ish ideas. So this is our kitsch. Then neo-militarism, which you can already probably understand, or later on I will get to this. This what became the fundamental UI style for the player itself. That would be the system the player is using. So the color palette is coming again from it, from the fundamental rules defined in the art Bible, and red one being the dominant color here. That's what stands for all of this aggression, the militaristic aspect of it. And on the mockups or on the art Bible, what you've seen before, usually the whole scene or what we associate with neo-militarism is rather dark thing, and what's this red military accent is usually UI. So from the whole beginning, we had this kind of nature in the neo-militarism. Then there is neo-kitsch, which is a lot more sophisticated from the shape vocabulary. It's a bit more elegant than all of the other ones. It works with the fluent and subtle patterns, working out the materials which I talked about, sort of like the layers of the tree. So this is the idea what we worked with in the neo-kitsch style. Okay, so let's talk about how we made this UI, how we made neo-militarism the core part or the style which the player was interacting with the rest of the game. So it started with the mission, and those were our tasks. So we wanted to represent what neo-militarism stands for. So military idea, distinguishable in the jungle out there, so to speak, and kind of aggressiveness. That was our goal. With it, we had some starting references from our art directors, taking stuff from the Villeneuve's from the Villeneuve's Blade Runner and Ghost in the Shell, and using the colors we associated with the neo-militarism already. So here you can see first of the mock-ups or concept arts, which our concept artist prepared at the beginning of the cycle of working on the Cyberpunk. And after this, it went to the UI team, so we started trying to work it out. So let's dive deep into it. Yeah, here is a little bit head up about the concept, about the idea, how the UI is actually going from this non-diegetic aspect, because we are a rather traditional game, and to go a little bit closer to the narrative connection with the world, we've been playing with the idea that all the UI you see is actually the projection on your eyeballs, and that's why we decided, or that's why we developed the subtle hint of it, at least, and that's this curvature of the whole UI, which kind of like hints what's going on here, or how is it projected, how is it perceived by the player, by the avatar you control. So yeah, I already jumped into the one of the topics, which is the HUD, and I'll walk you through it quickly. So this is like the super first version we had, one of the earliest demos, and next iteration, which is the demo from Gamescom, I believe. And you can see that we're like starting like playing with the exact tones, exact shades of those colors to make them work. But also at the same time, it started together, we started as a team, started to gather some feedback about this. And of course, this feedback was very much rooted to the conventional aspects of the color palettes we choose. So we started getting the informations that red is very uncomfortable to read. It's not pleasant for the eyes to go through the game with the longer session of playing it, with most of the things being red for you. So this is pretty much the moment where bumpy road rather started for us in the UI, and we started being like not so sure if this is therefore the way. So we started like tweaking it and searching for some like more subtle, more friendly approach. And yeah, this is one of them, like trying to make the colors a bit less saturated. But this is our peach period. Next one is kind of like goldish, like trying to take the colors rather from the entropism, for example. But yeah, always we struggled with this, with all of those exercises, the way that our mission was, after all, clear. We understood, or we felt like what the neo-militarism, what this aggressive nature of the UI should be. That's what we started kind of like mentally associating the game with. The only problem was like perception of it for the audience. But nevertheless, we just took this challenge, because all of those colors I showed you before, it didn't really work. It didn't have this nature of Cyberpunk which we wanted to achieve. So we did the full circle to return back to the beginning with the color palette, and we started figuring out how to make it work actually. So this is one of the latest iterations of UI on the HUD. I have a couple of more examples here for the full screens. So yeah, again, our gold period. You know, like Picasso had its blue period and pink period. We had something similar internally in the CDPR while working on the Cyberpunk. So here is our greenish period, going to the colder blue, magenta-ish. But constantly, from the mockup perspective, returning with this red stuff, which eventually convinced us that we should do it, and we did. And this is one of the final screens we have in the game. One last example for the inventory. And what we actually shipped. So let's talk a little bit about the building blocks, about the construction elements for the whole UI, which we did for the Cyberpunk. Okay, I a little bit screwed the presentation here, but okay, let's show you first the final results which we got to, which is the game we shipped, and talk a little bit how we made this red color work. So basically, we established the two fundamental colors for us, which would be the red and cyan as a secondary color palette for the identity of us. And the red one works because, or it's much more pleasant to look at, is because we played with the whole palette of the shades and of the tints and versions of the red color. So using the whole spectrum here. Yeah, so a couple of examples. What's of the final game. Yeah, a little bit teaser about like how our UI actually made it even outside of the game to the other medias, which those are a couple of screenshots from the Edge Runners, which I don't know if you've seen it. If you didn't, you should. It's really awesome, and it's really a special thing for me to see because all of the UIs we created were actually like replicated in this series, and again, it brings those both worlds together much better. They elevate each other and they work in wonderful synergy. And from the studio perspective, it was like a perfect decision to do, and amazing step from the Trigger Studio that they actually took our user interfaces and made the use of them in their anime series. Okay, so this is what was supposed to show on the building blocks. So this is the final color palettes which we came to, being the red one and the cyan. Of course, we are RPG games, so supporting all of the rarity of the items, that has to be there. Another building blocks are the fonts collection. So primary is Rajdani and secondary is Orbitron. Very important decision for all of the game dev studios to choose the font which covers all of your needs. So for a AAA game like Cyberpunk, we need to cover myriads of languages, and Rajdani was like the perfect compromise and aesthetically like fitting font to deliver all the means we needed. Orbitron, on the other hand, it's like a secondary font. It's basically just about aesthetics. That was the font which wasn't really localized, but it was just the secondary one to complete the palette of the fonts available for us. Then a little bit about the layout. So this is the structure, how our full screen panels are built. So there is certain rule set, grid-based defined, from which we organize all the panels in the UI. Then a little bit of the assets and the vocabulary which we decided to do. So our item cells with rarity stripes, and as you can see from the aesthetic standpoint, it's basically like recreation or kind of like user interface incarnation of the idea of the chip. So you have some sort of like bracket which you take and plug in, some kind of like socket, and that's what where this cut corner on the side comes from. So this is basically the idea for most of the assets in the Cyberpunk user interface. Here is a little breakdown into the components and little inner rules we had for it. So you can see there is this bracket element and the cell, the frame. And basically from it, we created everything you see in the Cyberpunk. So this was our visual vocabulary. And here you can see our arsenal of tooltips. And if I go back a little bit to the building blocks, this is how our core Atlas asset looks like, and this is pretty much all textures we have to create the whole user interface. Most of them are like edge cases to be used, so actually just a handful of those things create the majority of the items of the features you see in the UI. Of course, there are icons. for the game like Cyberpunk, it's the huge open world, so it has to support plenty of applications of them, but it's still important if you do the icons that they work nicely together. So even if the style-wise they are not necessarily all the same, they can't be with the penzium of the information you have to convey with the UI of such scope. They still should work together, and we achieve this pretty much through the balance of the contrast and the negative space around the icons. So when you see them all on the one slide, they don't really like crazy stand up, like there are no like crazy anomalies which like hit your eye. So that's about the icons, and that's all about the Cyberpunk. And with this, we can move to the last chapter, which is the future, and a little bit philosophical chapter of my presentation.
Sorry, could we do the Q&A?
I could quickly fly through this,
Yeah.
or I mean,
If you could do it in a minute. Or
it
two.
shouldn't be that long. I know we're like 50 minutes.
Cool.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with the future, but by covering quickly the history of the game industry, where it started with the pen and paper games like Dungeons and Dragons, and how it gradually became like a very sophisticated genre in the medium, going through the simple, abstract, and numerical. Okay, let's go a little bit back here. So, how the game industry started, like what the games used to be before. It was pen and paper games, and they used the numbers as a supplement of features which they couldn't convey anyway around differently, right? So that's why we had all the sheets, all of the statistics, all of the qualities broke down into mathematical formulas, and something which was possible to play with on the pen and paper perspective. Over the time, on the history, which you can see, the games become like much more sophisticated. The games of this type started being converted into the virtual space, and took it as a foundation, started building up the RPGs as we know them today. What changed over the time is the sophistication of the games themselves. So, and with it, the question if all of those numbers basically are still necessary, right? Because numbers were there to supplement the things like the physics, like gravity, and things like this. But current games can do all of this on their own. So for me, as a developer, as the user interfaces, it's starting to be like the question for the future, if we still need actually all of those UIs, all of this clutter on the screen, all of this representation in the numbers, which for the game industry started to being like the nostalgic habit connected to the past. But the question for me is if we still need them, in such a scope as we do them, because I see it as a habit as the industry, which I kind of question if it's still necessary. A little bit about this on the HUD. So we started with some kind of like conventional games, conventional HUDs, where most of the information was available to you from the whole beginning on the game, and you always seen it. So that's how the games started. Gradually, in the past years, we are starting to actually reflect on the topics I mentioned, that we try to hide at least some elements which are not contextually necessary for you as you play the game. So you see the health bar only when there's a combat, and etc. So my question is, couldn't we get even further and make the games actually HUD-less or as HUD-light as possible, and stop conveying the information through the habits we have, and stop distracting the player from actually like observing and playing the world, and constantly like lurking on the indicators all around the screen. So maybe we can do it. Maybe we can, instead of conventional big icons showing you, hey, pay attention to me, we could have something different, something maybe like the commentary from the avatar you play with, or some other creative ideas. Here's simple presentation of the idea. how it feels like if you fight just with you yourself and kind of like learned moveset with your enemy, with your foe, instead of if you like have like the full set of UI, which you constantly like looking around and not being that much immersed in the world. Navigation is of course like one of the biggest topics here. So this is what became standard, like absolute overwhelm of the points of interests on the map. Yet we also here see something new, what Elden Rings did here, and they actually gave a little bit of navigational agency back to the player. So instead of highlighting everything, you have just the map, you reveal it, and you pin the elements or the parts which you care about as you progress through the story. So you don't have this crazy overwhelming stuff as in this previous slide. Yeah, here I dared to do a little mock-up what it actually could be like. What's still the map? You're still immersed in this. Your character is interacting with this, but you see it as well. So this is kind of technical challenge for the games, but I think we should put this into consideration and try to do games like this. And it's definitely not true that nobody ever did this before. So we have a couple of examples which actually made the tools on means of navigation in the hand of the character. And this is Shadow of the Colossus, which is a very elegant solution for it. Your character has a sword, and once you find the proper direction, the beam concentrates and kind of highlights, this is the way for you. And it's not just the UI overlay or just kind of like map blinking on you that, hey, go there. Yeah, this is another wonderful example of how can this be done. So Ghost of Tsushima came up with the feature called the wind, and basically once you activate it, the winds start blowing, and the direction the wind is blowing is your next objective. So again, like very environmental storytelling, environmental navigation, and not traditional UI, which we tend to use. All right, and this is it. That's the all of my presentation. So thank you very much for your attention. And we have like 8 minutes for the Q&A, approximately. So let's go into this.
So yes, big round of applause for Vladimír. So yeah, we have approximately 5 minutes for questions. If anybody has
just 5
anything.
minutes.
Yeah, it's okay. We have time for some quick questions though.
So if you have questions, please shoot them.
If you shoot your hand up, I'll bring the microphone over if anybody has anything.
Oh, I see you much better from here.
Hi, Martin here.
Hello.
I have just a question about disability with color. Like, how do you cope with? You mentioned colors a lot. And how do you cope with color blindness and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's definitely a very new topic for us. So we are incorporating it in our games. And basically, what you mentioned, colors doesn't matter. So you have to convey all of those informations into the people who are not so fortunate to have perfect vision. So usually, how you do this, you do it through the contrasts and through the shapes, through the vocabulary of shapes. So basically, if you do the game design or user interface, you can't count on the colors, right? That's when all of the conventions disappear, and you need to have the means for those kind of players to understand the information. So it's becoming a very important thing. Like the big studios are definitely pushing for this, and we as a CDPR also. It's like I mentioned, new topic, but we are working on this and putting quite some effort to it. Thanks for the question.
I think there was another question in the front here.
What do you think about pop-ups as a UI element?
Pop-ups?
Mm-hmm.
Like from the UI perspective. Yeah, again, like I mentioned, we want to be immersive, therefore like being as light as possible on the UI. So pop-ups are not the best way. We don't like them.
We have time for maybe another question, if anybody's there. Yep.
Hi, Vlado here.
Hello.
You said you work on Cyberpunk UI. So, what was the foundations you receive for creating UI? Like those 4 visual styles, you made them, or you collaborate to create them, or what was given to you to start with?
Yeah, I was working on this personally with our art director, like in a little tandem. And what we had already was the art Bible for the whole game, or at least it was like born at the same time. So together, as we established all of those styles for the rest of the game, we also did this for the UI. So collaboratively with my art director, we went through it. We went through plenty of iterations, the color palettes, the aesthetics, the visual vocabulary to convey all of those styles. And yeah, so 2 of us did this basically. And of course, as you may notice, the neo-militarism style in the art Bible is kind of like first iteration of it. So the UI took it from this point and like elaborated and created like the proper UI function of it, because the Bible was kind of just like the direction, the colors, the aesthetics, the moods. So it was set there, but then we like elaborated further. So that's how I hope this answered the question. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Vladimír.
Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Yeah. Can everyone give him another round of applause?
Oh, thank you.
I'd also just like to bring everyone's attention, there will also be an app called Slido. There'll be a QR code on the screen in a minute. If you scan that code, it's basically somewhere you can put your questions online, so you don't have to worry about rushing to get them through in the 5 minutes that we give people at the end.
Sure.
So yeah, if you scan this code here, you'll be able to like queue up any questions that you have on the phone, and that way we can maybe try and get through a few more of them at the end of each of the talks. Also, one other small thing, if someone's dropped a Nipex clip, it's at the front if anybody needs that. But yeah, thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you guys, and enjoy the game days. See you around.